Enrico is a professor from the School of Economics at the University of Milano Bicocca and also the coordinator of the master program. And he will chair the session Tackling Research Infrastructure Challenges Through Leadership Training Programs.
Thank you, Maria Elisa. I will invite here also the speaker of this session, Francisco Colomer, Ilaria Nardello, Anna Casino, to stay here with me, and Monique Bossi as well.
Please use these stairs
Only
here.
use these stairs here on the right side, please.
Okay, yes.
Stay here because of the video.
Okay, fantastic. Okay.
This will be very discussion sessions. We invite to first presentation from Francisco Colomer, then the second one, third one, and then we have a discussion all together with the public at the end. Okay, thank you, Francisco.
So, thank you very much. I am Francisco Colomer, Paco Colomer, Director of Jive ERIC. Jive ERIC is a research infrastructure in astronomy. Actually, it's the only ERIC that exists in this field of astronomy. It's based in the Netherlands, and it coordinates a network of 20 radio telescopes that are distributed all around the world, mainly in Europe, but all around the world. I was engaged in the master program, Executive Master in Management of Research Infrastructures, EMMRI. Well, at the time, I'm one of the fortunate of the first edition in this master. There are a number of friends here in the room. And at the time I was engaged into this, I really had very little formal education in management, okay? So I'm one of many scientists that we start many years ago in research, and we start getting involved in managing some projects, maybe bigger projects. We have a group, then we have to manage this group of people, and we learn by experience. And we actually learn a lot. We know how to do lots of things, like everybody here, but the specifics of the formal education was missing. So now I am the director. Okay? I'm supposed to know everything. That's what directors are. Well, it's not exactly like that. Of course, we learn every day. We learn every day. But I must confess, at the time, 2 years ago, when I was in the process of applying for the position of director, I suspect that the fact that I was engaged in a master program was a negative thing from the panel. It was seen like I was missing something, because everybody knows, directors know everything. So why was it that I was? And I think that is still a challenge. In many aspects, it is still a challenge, and we are here. Well, we are the converted ones, right? We are the ones who know that this is important. Where are all the other people? The other people who haven't come are the ones who really should be hearing to our discussions, right? There's a lot to do. Okay, so I've been asked to talk about what did it mean, the master program for Jive, for this research infrastructure. And it has come in a very good moment, because Jive has been working as an entity, as a research infrastructure for 25 years now. But only the last 5 years has been an ERIC. And, well, you know that ERICs are started, and then they have this first 5-year period, and then, well, there comes the next 5-year period, hopefully, and we are just in that very moment. We are at the end of 2019, reviewing Jive, setting up the strategy for the next 5 years, setting up the budgets, setting up let's say, the way we want to structure the stuff. And every single aspect, every single module in the master program has been answering every single question. It has been extremely timely that I could be engaged into this master program during the time in which we were approaching to this very special moment. One of the things that, well, I had realized that our research infrastructure had a challenge actually became the field project in the master. I used this idea that we had a big problem. Well, I thought it was a big problem. And I would like to find solutions. So we engaged with the professors in the master program, and we were looking at the different governance models, trying to find innovation ways of, well, solving the issue that our 20 telescopes that are part of this network, of this research infrastructure, are governed by a different body that JIVE itself. So we have the telescopes, and then we have JIVE, and JIVE actually what does is collects the data of these telescopes, processes the data, provides the science-ready products, supports the users, but does not control the telescopes themselves. So there are actually two research infrastructures that talk to each other, but they are not the same. And that was kind of, well, it's been working for 40 years. I mean, it possibly is not a very bad model, but as time passes and everything gets more complicated, we identified that solving this and getting the two more together would be a very good solution. And this actually became my, my field project. So in that sense, and we are actually, well, we are still discussing, Maria Luisa, if this is going to be implemented or not. But it is true that it was already a very good feedback from the master into that point. Well, as I say, every single module about stakeholders, about governance is this that I just mentioned. The network of 22 telescopes is called the European BLBI network, this thing. Okay, and as you know, well, the members that we have in the ERIC are the governments, but the members in the network are, in the EVN, are telescopes, are national facilities, and the talking between the two is, well, is really sometimes challenging. And this is the fact that we are in a distributed research infrastructure. And this research infrastructure, this is very interesting. It provides a very huge added value to the national facilities. But on the other hand, often, and please correct me if it doesn't happen to you, the national priorities have also to be respected. So the national priorities sometimes collide with the interests and ambitions of the research infrastructure. And this is a balance that we always have to do. So all of this was tackled in this project. Okay, another aspect that I think that also the EMMRI was useful was to define the strategy that actually we are implementing in a very rapidly changing international scenario. Why does this happen? Our network is not the only one. There are other networks in Asia, there is a network in the USA, there's a network in Australia. They are not the same, but, well, they're kind of competing and complementing each other all the time. And it is very important to know what is it that we do that makes us special. For example, the European network is the only one that runs in real time. We get the data from telescopes and get the image immediately, while the others have to record in this, send it by plane, analyze. It takes a few more weeks, right? But we are really unique in that. Okay, so what is it that you make your value more special than others, know it well, and defend it? So we did this. It has always, well, opportunities and risks that need to be balanced out. And then another of the modules was about services. We've been talking about services here. What is it that are our core business? What is it that are our core services that we do unique, special? And what is it, other things that we also like to do? We also are very clever in doing, but maybe they are not what our stakeholders want. They are not what our partners want. They are other things. And then we have to find support, financial support also for these new things. And then projects like the ones that generously are at the European Commission and also the national programs are extremely essential. Actually, in JIVE, 40% of the budget comes from projects, competitive projects. Only 60% is what we would call base budget or core activities. And you really need to know what comes in each box, otherwise it can be a really big mess. Okay, well, there was this other part, which is how you engage with the stakeholders. There will be a breakup session even in this workshop later. How you engage with the staff, how you engage with your users. And actually, in order to do this, we actually had even a review last year that it came with, well, to say that JIVE is an excellent infrastructure, and we are actually very careful in solving each one of these boxes, which are different. And finally, there was a module that was about communication in the master. And we agree, communication is essential. The science exists, but it really exists when it's communicated. If you haven't communicated it, okay, fine, but you really need to communicate to different audiences. It's not only general public communication, which is important, but also to your peers and also to the governments. You have to tell the society that these things that we do are important. And this is my last slide. Nice pictures. We had a lot of fun. The EMMRI experience created really a group of friends. I think that has been said many times. I would say two things. Well, the very important hands-on experience, it's been mentioned already. The fact that even the professors learned from us, I think that is quite fair to say. And I will also finish with this idea. Again, a director is supposed to know about everything, and that is not true. That is not possible. But many directors think so. I think it's important to get into these programs before you are in a position of very high management. I think these programs are useful for the whole of the institution. And of course, for the middle management, which I would suggest that is a bit more refocused when the master program is announced. That is, of course, very nice to have some directors, but it is much more important to get the people who still have the time and still, so that when they become directors, hopefully one day, they will have the appropriate experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francisco. I invite Ilaria Nardello for the presentation. Thank you, Ilaria.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure to see you all again. I'm the former director of EMBRC ERIC. I'm currently directing my own enterprise in support of RI management, or in general research organizations or young organizations who want to increase their chance of being sustainable. I think I learned a lot in my experience during EMBRC about this, and the master was also an element of building my credibility, I would say, in this area. So I just wanted to make a very small excursus of what the life of a scientist is and how it happens that this person comes into management, into very high-level management, perhaps. And I actually appreciate very much what Paco said. In my experience, I came very late into formal education on RI management, or management, if you want. However, the title of my presentation is really inspired by what I think is essential, and that resonates with what Paco said. It's essential to get some teachings, some formal education about how to do this, which is a profession completely different from being a scientist, and entails some really some tools and some educational instruments that the master can provide, or a formal education in MBA. So I would say that I went from being a scientist rocked by the waves. I was an oceanographer. I guess I still am in some part of my being, to being somebody who's being rocked by the board. I actually can say that the two experiences are not that different, especially when the seas are high. And so the board experience sometimes can be difficult, can be really tough. And it's tough, I think, for two reasons. You as a scientist may not be necessarily completely prepared for your task, but also the board often is made of scientists, and they as well may not be completely equipped to understand the challenges of managing a research infrastructure. Besides the research infrastructure, the ERIC instrument is a very young instrument, and the first ERIC was just established in 2011. So we're talking about less than a decade of history. And we're here trying to do something that is very complex. This instrument, the research infrastructures, are a complex being, a complex organism with a complex nature. It's partly public, it's partly private. So oftentimes, what the ERIC itself establishes an international public body. However, it's often private in nature when it's registered in one nation. At the same time, it's a not-for-profit endeavor, but it has to demonstrate its bankability. And it's supposed to foster, to advance science, but it's not really supposed to perform it. It's supposed to deliver services to scientists, but it's made of scientists who may not really resonate with the idea of just providing services instead of doing their own research. So it's a complex environment. And the organization itself is also complex, because some of these organizations are distributed over various nations. Some of them are centrally organized. However, they're all multinationals. And so it's not so easy to take into consideration the interests and the points of view of all the different stakeholders. And there are some challenges that are really unique to this world, and that may not pertain to an organization which is just an industry. We're not a research center, we're not an industry. We have personnel that is partly your own personnel, partly is provided in kind, partly it's a service. This complexity is not something we are used to deal with. Neither us as managers, neither the persons who are providing these resources are used to deal or to negotiate between parties about these matters. So, in this respect, a formal education really matters. And I think for a scientist, like me, for example, there is an opportunity, even if you get there maybe late, to really expand in some areas where you may feel an inclination or a curiosity or a necessity, as Paco was saying. In some areas, you may feel less prepared, less naturally equipped, or less experienced. And so in those cases, a master or an education in management will give you the full spectrum of tools and of aspects. It will illustrate all the aspects that a manager should consider when dealing with the management of this entity. So it really can help transitioning people from the scientific area to the business management, which is different. You will have to take into perspective different indicators. It's not just going to be your publications, it's going to be more indicators which you never thought were relevant, but they will become, and you will have to take those into account, and you will have to make them happen. You will have to strengthen them, you will have to enhance them, and so on. So the tools to get there, the connections you can get among your peers are also very, very important. And here I think that Emory has really a unique offer to make to this environment. We said this is a particular environment. It's not just any organization. These are research infrastructures. They're very peculiar. There is a particular instrument that has been created for them that's called an ERIC. They may take other forms as a private organization doing business, but they have something at the core that creates a unique environment that pertains to them. So for this reason, Emory can really become, or actually it already is the reference in understanding the specific issues of this environment, the specific challenges and the specific solutions. So the think tank that EMRI can be in bringing actors together and like-minded people and people dealing with the same issues is, it has a great potential to give us, say, solutions that are somewhat already registered. And here is how you can really become an education tool. I think this is what EMRI can become, learning from its students, and the students learning from the faculties who are specifically from the RI environment, but also from the management world in general, to create this managerial scientist figure for research infrastructure. So in this respect, I think that EMRI has a great future and can really provide us with something that will last in time and will become a reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilaria, for your presentation. And I invite Anna Casino from Chief Executive Officer from CETAF.
I'm here representing CETAF, but also the research infrastructure named DISCO. So when I first thought of this presentation, I thought of having a point of view of more academic, why learning is important. But I gave a second thought, and I realized that for me it was more important to present here my personal motivations, because I am totally in the opposite path. I'm not a scientist per se, I am an economist. So I think really my thoughts in terms of how I was motivated to participate in this course may help you as well to see that there are needs from many different aspects and facets of the staff and the personnel in the research infrastructure. So when I thought of the executive master in management of research infrastructures, it means acquire a new set of knowledge, improving our skills and competences, but I thought, okay, I am already an economist. I have also an MBA, so is there still a hole for me? Is there any benefit that I can take out of it? Even more, I'm already the executive director of a consortium of national natural history museums and botanic gardens across Europe, and I also I am already a deputy coordinator of a research infrastructure. So basically, I thought still a reason for participating in this course, and certainly, well, I'm taking the course, so certainly the answer was yes. And I want to encapsulate my reasoning in 5 specific responses. The first, studying for me is something that leads to excellence. Sharing know-how and experience is a must. That is an added value when you are learning. Testing my own knowledge, of course, I needed to do that, to put in value my own resources and tools, looking for the excellence in the research infrastructure that we are trying to manage is something that we'll all look forward, and finally enriching and having a good time with my peers and some other colleagues was also another kind of motivation. But let's go a little bit through all of them. Having a complete set of information, a package of knowledge, for me it was really important because we have a lot of relevant aspects encapsulated, as I said, into a unique course. We have a lot of cases, expert opinions, tested solutions, all proven models and tools that we were presented with by the teachers. And all of this was presented to us and is being presented, because I am still taking the course, all this is filtered, analyzed, synthesized as to produce that package of knowledge that we may need. Just to give some examples, when we went through the module of strategy, we learned that from our intuitive conception of which should be our mission, our vision, and the objectives of the research infrastructure, we had to translate this into a systematic process to really monitor, control, and when it comes the case, improve and enhance what we have first thought of. But it is the same with other modules, like the financial management. We have a perfect teacher. We had Elixir showing us that the scientific aspects needs to be coordinated, aligned, fully aligned with the financial plans. That means that all the aspects in the research infrastructure needs to be coordinated at once, taking into consideration the financial resources and the constraints that we may face in our research infrastructure. Moreover, we went through the sustainability of finding resources. We went through new tools like the private and public partnerships models. We also considered the, wow, it doesn't work? Well, we will be considering other modules when it comes to. Well, I may say something else, but.
Just use the arrows.
Okay, great. We went through the module of leadership. The leadership, when we thought of this, I always thought that becoming a leader was something natural. But we have learned that despite the soft skills that some leaders do implicitly have in their own personalities, managers can be made, and can be made with, by furnishing them with the right skills that they may need from the very start. So learning is trying to connect what is a leader with what it is a successful manager. My last module so far, it was related to communication, to raising awareness of the branding of our research infrastructure, how to increase reputation, and at the end, how to foster creativity in the use of the tools, the available tools, social media and other traditional means as well. And you can see that the team I was able to work with were very, very creative. This is not mine at all. That the set of knowledge that we are acquiring is great. But for me, the second set of reasons were more of sharing practices. Ilaria was mentioning as well, and Paco, that one added value of these kind of courses comes from the possibility of sharing for us who are at the very beginning of the development of the research infrastructure, because we are in the preparatory phase, we have and we will to learn from others, from their best practices, from the lessons that they have acquired during their own development. So for us, sharing experiences, getting to a face-to-face dialogue with others that might be in a more advanced level of maturity was a real added value, personal and also institutionally. Testing my own experience was something that really motivated me to participating here. I had, of course, a set of tools and a set of competences that I knew of, but I wanted to really put this in value. I wanted to implement what I knew by strategically highlight which were the right topics that I needed to address and how to better use my resources and tools. So this part of the need and the motivation to participate in Embry was crucial for me. Looking for excellence. even though we are very young, because DISCO as a research infrastructure, well, let me say that DISCO, if I didn't say it before, DISCO stands for Distributed System of Scientific Collections. It refers to the collation of data from natural science, and the aim of this research infrastructure is giving open access to all kinds of data that the physical objects hold in the natural science collections can provide to the scientific community and, of course, to the society at large. But looking for excellence is a priority for us. We are developing the research infrastructure, but we know that we have and we need to be the best as much as we can, because we are a foundation for many other research infrastructures. We are the ones that need to provide the reference to further develop, model, investigate, analyze how life on Earth functions. So for us, it was really crucial to have a team of excellence. 2 people, the coordinator of the research infrastructure and myself are taking the course, but we also have the team participation, which means that we provide other nodes, other facilities throughout and across Europe to participate in different models so they really gain the experience and the skills that they may require. And last but not least, we have a lot of discussions, a confrontation. We all, the participants in this course, we come from different levels of maturity, as I said, different domains, different perspectives, different cultures, even cultures, but we had a very, very, very enriching experience. And for me, this is something that really motivates to be participating in this module, in the course at large. Because for me, I really support what I found in the Cambridge Dictionary. Managing is only succeeding in doing or dealing with something especially complex and difficult. And for me, research infrastructures, as we have heard, they are not only young, they are very, very special and very, very complex. So learning is a process. It's something that is not only acquiring a set of facts, it's something that relates to the understanding of all the complexity, of all the facets, all the aspects that are gathered together in a single institution, in a single organization, which is a research infrastructure, made up of a bunch of them all. We are 119 institutions from 21 countries willing to build up DISCO. So you can see that the complexity of the environment, the complexity of the landscape that we have to manage is really high. For all those reasons, for me, it's been a success participating in the EMBRI. I don't know if I can convince you more, but I really think that this is an opportunity for all of us and all the staff that with whom we collaborate to have an updated and very high level knowledge. So, well, I cannot do more. Huh? Thanks a lot. And
Thank you very much, Anna. Of course, we did agree before. No, absolutely, but was very thankful for your thoughts. And now we have Monique Bossi, who's also attending the EMRI program, second intake, but she also participated in the first round as picking up some modules, and so it was an interesting case also, different patterns to enter the program. Thank you, Monique.
Thank you. So, yes, indeed. I have a fourth perspective on the module, being the fourth speaker. So first, let me thank you for inviting me here today. It's an honor really to be part of this pool of speakers. And just a quick introduction about myself. My name is Monique Bossi. I'm from the Italian National Research Council, and I'm currently part of the IRIS research infrastructure. IRIS is the infrastructure of heritage science. What we do is we bring hard science into the humanist domain. It's not very straightforward to understand what we do. Last time we met for the module in Milan, I understood that this is not really easy to explain. We need to go to see, to visit the Last Supper of Leonardo to explain really in concrete what IRIS is doing. And then my colleagues said, the master colleagues said, okay, now it's clear. So maybe we have to work on the visibility and communication a little bit more. So as Enrico was saying, indeed, I have a different path from from the previous speakers. And I had the possibility to attend a few modules of the first edition of the Masters. And at that time, I was not working for a research infrastructure. Indeed, I was working for the National Agency for the Promotion of European Research as a national contact point for research infrastructure. So maybe you may know what a national contact point is. So we know a little bit of theory, but we have no, let's say, concrete clues on practice. So it was very interesting for me to have the possibility to attend these modules, because I got in contact with the daily life of research infrastructure, and this was very, very useful for me and gave me a hint. Okay, I don't have a presentation, so this might also help with these technological issues. Okay, so nevertheless. And then in the meantime, I moved to IRIS. So I had the possibility to bring the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge that I had gained as a national contact point for 20 years, so starting from FP5 and throughout all the different editions of the framework programs, to IRIS. And I think that this was considered as an added value from the recruiters that eventually hired me to be part of IRIS. And indeed, also I think, as infrastructure, we recognize the importance of such different paths and the importance of attending and gain a formal education on managing research infrastructure. At the end of the day, we have 3 people attending the masters, 1 in the previous edition, Costanza Miliani, and 2 in the current edition, which is myself and Jana Striova, who's the head of the coordination office in IRIS. My presentation today is about multicultural and networked environment and how to lead them. And this is a title that I proposed. And when I had a second thought, I said, oh my God, what I've done? Why such a title? It sounds fancy, but then I started thinking about the presentation, and I started preparing slides and copy pasting pictures and so on. And then I said, okay, let's try to focus. And then I attended the module on leadership, which is actually the longest module in the master program. It lasts 5 days. So we had 5 days discussing a lot about leadership and what being a leader means in the frame of a research infrastructure that, as we saw, are complex, different, strange organization. And indeed, throughout all the lectures, I think it always came out, someone said, yes, but we are different. Yes, but this is not really a company. It's something different. It's not a network. We always have these kind of comments, which are indeed true. But nevertheless, we have to find a common way to tackle these issues. So discussing about the leadership, the first items that we got is, to be a leader, you need to have followers. Of course, you have followers that you lead. But then we thought, is it enough? Is it enough? I mean, Ronaldo is the most successful profile on Instagram, nearly 2 million followers. Is he a leader? Then we had the peak on Twitter of a Korean pop band. They had a massive number of followers on Twitter. And I thought, is it enough to be a leader? to have millions of followers? It's clearly not enough. You need something more. And then I discussed with my colleagues and with some friends, and I said, okay, if I ask you who's a leader for you at world level, what would you say? Which is the name that comes to your mind? And of course, we had the usual suspects, as always. But then we had also some, let's say, specific names or some unusual names. But what they had in common, for instance, Greta Thunberg and Willy Brandt, just to speak about something which is very recent as the anniversary of the Berlin Wall, they had enough that they had a big dream, and they had the resources to mobilize the followers that were mentioned before. And as I said, okay, so as Anna said, to be a leader, you have some personal skills, soft skills, so it's something that is in you. But is it enough, again, to be a leader, I mean, in this context, in a research infrastructure? So how can we then translate this knowledge when it comes to research infrastructure and to what we have to do every day? Can we learn how to be a leader? Are there competencies proper of a leadership that can be translated, that can be teach to some in a master courses, for instance? And then I said, okay, so now I have to downsize to research infrastructure. So what we need? We are in a multicultural and a distributed, in most of the cases, environment. So what do we need in order to do our job properly on a daily life? Every day we have to do with different geographical origins, gender, religion, age, educational background, and this is, let's say, very common. It's part of what we do every day. It's not really, I would say, any more multicultural. It's so embedded in what we do that it's now our culture, I think. So I said, okay, what do we need? Which are the items that we need to manage this? And indeed, management is the magic word. And then during the module, we had long discussions about the difference between being a leader and being a manager. Because at the beginning, when we first started the modules, we had expectation about, okay, so now we understand and we learn how to be a leader, which is not the case. So, but what we did is we learned what you need to do or what you need to know to be a good manager. And this is definitely something that you can learn. Throughout the modules, as Anna and also Paco very well showed, we acquired and we are acquiring, as I'm attending the second edition, which is not finished, and we hopefully get the graduation in June. We acquired very, very, very many different skills, going from crisis management, organization and governance, mission, vision, values. So my colleagues already show some of the items that we got. And indeed, these are competencies that you can gain, that if you have faculties that are willing to share their knowledge with you, you can gain, but you can gain also from peer-to-peer, not only peer-to-peer, because as I said, I am not a scientist, I have not grown my career in a research infrastructure, but still I can participate to the discussion. And this is really, really, I think, to me, the most important and enriching part of the master, the group, the network that has been created among the people, students and teachers. So going to the management skill and manager's skill, as I said, these are definitely things, items that you can, knowledge that you can get. But then there is another point. Is it enough to have one good manager, a director that knows all, everything? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I don't think it's possible and then also useful. But what you need definitely is to have, in this case, it's another role, maybe a director or a chief who's able to understand that there are specific skills that are needed within the infrastructure, and that although research infrastructures are about science and are for the scientific community, scientists cannot do everything, as economists cannot do anything, as humanists cannot do anything. So you really need to create a multicultural, again, environment within the infrastructure with different complementary competencies that altogether can recreate a complete puzzle, as we saw early on. So that's about my experience, that the complexity and the different landscape of research infrastructure maybe cannot be led, but can definitely be managed. But in order to be managed, you do need to acquire specific competencies that cannot stay in one person, but can definitely stay in a group of persons that have the possibility and the will and the curiosity to enlarge the border of their background education. So for sure, participating to the master is, let's say, I think, vital in this let's say, idea that I have in mind. And indeed, it's a very successful tool. I do really believe this. And that's, okay, I just want to close my intervention. Maybe, I'm pretty sure you all know this. Maybe. Okay. That doesn't work, no matter. It's a very famous, animation from Bruno Bozzetto about Italians and Europeans, about queuing or about, okay, this is just the bit about coffee. So you know that when you have Italians in a bar, they ask for a macchiato, ristretto, cappuccino freddo, cappuccino caldo, and then you have, let's say, in these stereotypes, the Europeans, they just ask for coffee. So maybe what you need at the end is just a good bartender that is able to satisfy all the different shades of taste in coffee. So that's it from my side.
Thank you, Monique. We have, I think, a few minutes for questions. I would like to raise some questions from the audience and then try to answer. On the back side.
Thank you. I'm Ana from Elixir, Portugal, and I'm also attending the EMRI in the team modality. So I have colleagues from Elixir who attend certain modules. And I have a question for Enrico and maybe Maria Luisa, and then also a comment. And the question is also how knowing better the landscape of RIs challenges a management school in the way the experts and scientists study management, and how can they also contribute scientifically to solve some of our problems. I also would like to share that for us at the Elixir level, it's also interesting to be able to solve problems in different nodes, benefiting from the expertise of social scientists from the management school. Thank you.
Big questions. We will answer at the end. Please collect other questions, especially for our speaker. Curiosity. Please.
Thank you. I'm Edward Mitchell from the European Synchrotron down in Grenoble. I just wonder, given all your experiences, do you think that you have to be a scientist to be the CEO or a Director General of an RI?
Hopefully not, because it shouldn't be a requirement, I may say. Well, I think we were hearing from Paco that these kind of masters will do pave the path of transferring from science to business. But it goes the other way around as well. And I think that I have to highlight this first because I'm not a scientist, as I said per se, well, not in the natural sciences at least. And second, because the connection is really crucial. And I presented a slide from the financial management module because for me it was really important to see how the scientific drivers that are at the core of the research infrastructure need always to be connected and aligned and fully coordinated with the financial aspects. So being a scientist, becoming a CEO is better or worse than the opposite or wrong? I don't think there is any formula, any fixed thing. I really think that you need to be furnished with the adequate skills and competences as to be the right person in the right place at the right moment. But this is not a requirement, it's just a need. This is my personal opinion, but really I can see from many different examples, that this is the reality.
I will continue on your thoughts. And it's a great question. Of course, it's very challenging. And I think that being a scientist or having had a formal education in science is as important as having a formal education in management, because the persons you're dealing with are scientists at 90%, and not understanding their mentality can really be an obstacle in understanding how to bring some solutions into their world. So I think it's a sensitivity and that the manager would need to have. And perhaps a person that has had a formal education in science and went into management quite early, or vice versa, a manager that then decided they wanted to explore the scientific part, could have that ideal mix of sensitivity and tools.
Paco, do you want to add?
I don't know if there's more questions, but just because I agree with you, I'm not going to say more, but maybe I remember when we discussed about scientific journalism. It could be something similar. Is it better that a scientist learns how to publish, and becomes a journalist or gets these skills, or is the other way around better? Is a journalist who learns about science? And possibly none of both is really the solution. Both coexist. And then, well, it is like somewhere in the middle. Huh? And we are a bit of somewhere in the middle because, well, you like it or not, when you are a scientist and become a director, you cannot do so much science either, okay? So you have to accept that. It's a different position. But I agree. I think you need to know a little bit of what you are dealing with, your product. Maybe it's not a full requirement that you have been a top scientist either. So one or the other.
There is a question. Yeah. I just had a short answer, but you prepare. If you look at the job profile of people attending executive MBA, not in the field of research infrastructure, but in the business world, most of them have a scientific background or a technical background, I would say. So most are engineer or lawyer who have been a long experience after 10 years, 12 years in the field, managing the production or other issues, and then they comes out, they need something more formal in order to fix some of the issues they already have been used to manage, but they feel that it's time they miss something. And so they attend the executive MBA not only to jump to another position in their career, but also to improve their management skills and so on. So it's quite similar in some way. And then they already have some position on that, or maybe they use the participation in MBA to jump in this kind of careers. Most of them succeed after the MBA. Please.
Yeah, so Yannick Legre, AGI, it's more a statement, but I will disguise it as a question. So I heard that among the modules, you are learning about crisis management, strategy, and management itself. But one of my points is that while we prepare for avoiding failure, I am not sure whether you are properly prepared to be successful. And I think that success is a more higher risk of failure than anything else, because the stress and the pressure it put on the organization And on the size of the team, for example, if you're 10 times more successful than anticipated, how do you double your working team? How do you maintain your equilibrium within your organization, and so on and so forth? And I would say, do you think that you are prepared enough to be successful?
You want to answer?
We are successful. Yes, I agree with you. It says that success is the most, let's say, point for success, right? To be successful is the best for future success. I think we are dealing with all these scenarios, and I think, of course, we have this SWOT analysis, for example, which is strengths, weakness, and so on. We look there how we can grow. We also look where are the challenges, and I think we have to do that all the time. To be so successful that we multiply by 10, well, it is going to be a challenge if that happens, okay? I think it is part of the strategy that when we are looking forward for the next many years, 5, 10 years from now, what is it that we see our infrastructure in? And 10 years from now, we can be really ambitious, and I think this is also what has been said about leadership. You need to have a very good vision of where you are going, but also all the time we are realistic in the sense that many times we are a service, many times we are, as I said before, many times we are expected to behave and do some things, and that can be a limitation for our research infrastructure. We have to balance the two things very well. It is really challenging sometimes because the people who run the infrastructure are scientists that are ambitious themselves, right? But we have to manage this ambition properly. And this is a very hard task for the manager.
Yes, what a beautiful question, I think. That was really. And, well, I think the answer is also for the next management level, which is the board. And I think that as directors, you may be ready to tackle whatever comes your way. You may just decide to do all that it takes to be successful and be prepared to work very long hours and, you know, use all your resources and ask your people to do the best and try to hire more persons, the persons that are more skilled and best equipped, etc. But you will have to convince somebody. In order to be able to make that happen, you will need to convince your board before anything else. And I think in this environment, there is a particular challenge. This is a business that we as directors, and maybe I should talk for myself, but I as a director would have imagined as a business in the sense of being productive, being able to deliver, not for profit, but in terms of products as per our targets. But the board needs to understand that investments are required and you cannot be productive without investments. So as a director, you will need to win that challenge even before you win the organizational challenges at the lower end.
Just a very quick comment on this. It's true that success is part of everyone's ambition, not only the directors, but I would say everyone's ambition. The point is that if being too successful becomes a risk for the organization, then of course you have to have the knowledge on how to deal with this, because a crisis is a crisis. So if being too successful then becomes a breaking point of your activity, then you have to manage it as any other type of crisis. And these are, I would say, let's say, neutral items to manage. The important thing is that you know, maybe the director or maybe the managers that are supporting the director, how to deal with a crisis event, then whatever the cause might be. But then you know that there are some steps that you have to follow, a timeline that you have to follow, and I think this is part of the formal education that we are gaining.
I think this is a very tricky question because success may mean totally different things for different partners of the same research infrastructure. And I would like to refer to the complexity itself of the research infrastructures, because we do have governmental representatives, scientists, managers at different levels. We have users, many different communities of users, and their expectations and therefore their measure of success of the research infrastructure might be different. And we have to provide, as managers, directors, or people that are taking decisions within the research infrastructure, a compound of all those satisfactory results or replies to those needs. So the level of complexity increases, not when you talk about failures, which is 1 or 2 or 3. When you talk about success, I think the complexity is there within the research infrastructure. From my point of view, what you need to be is, as you said, prepared with the adequate tools, with the adequate knowledge, with the right analysis, with your staff well-equipped and skilled. You are prepared. If you get to the success or not, referring to the different participants in and agents of the research infrastructure, that is something. But this is the dream, the ambitious, and I think we have to drive ourselves towards that.
I think time is time to close the sessions. I think we have to answer to the first questions, which is very tough for me. Yes, you Anna, point out 2 issues. First one, how this experience challenged our university on science and management. And the other issues that I understood, I've catch from your question is how to make this experience scalable at the nodes level in different countries, and I think to different targets also, not just for people in a top leader position. So first one, I think that when we started this experience, this is, in our perspective, is an interesting case in our universe of interdisciplinary and interdepartmental collaboration between hard science and social science. My background and most of our faculty from UNIME faculty background is in management and business. So with this EMRI and RItrain program, we have done a sort of experiment to test and deploy some of the well-known management tools and knowledge to the specific field of research infrastructure. When I remember 5 years ago, I was involved by my colleague Maria Luisa, which I have to thank you for this opportunity. I made the same questions that the European Commission, in particular the ESFRI committee, made. Why we need some special management training for research infrastructure? And the answer, Dominique said, because research infrastructure are special. And exactly our awareness between our faculty members, research infrastructure are very complex, which needs, of course, a special management program, but also to develop some very special knowledge for them. And this means also peer-to-peer learning, developing peer-to-peer tools and knowledge. And of course, we are proud to have on board also a very well-known faculty of experts from the field. And they are contributing very well to the program in developing these tools and knowledge together with us, with the faculty. So we are just develop something new. And with this RItrain program and EMRI in particular, I think European Union has started to seed to answer these needs, but it's very, very small piece now. So moving to the second, your question is how to replicate, to make this scalable in a wider. This is a big issue, I think, and we need to, of course, think how to replicate this experience, I think, successful on a large scale, and also to find the ways in which this could be, this experience could be spread out, because we don't think that we should be in the next future the only one unique provider of this executive education, because this should be also spread out different issues. Why this is very challenging? Because I think most of your experience have confirmed that it's very different between training and education. And both of you have underlined this, because training may be also short courses on tools and some specific issues. But all of you have underlined the unique experience, and you, Ilaria, have used the term educations and not training, just training. Educational way of learning, connecting dots, connecting tools, reflecting on their past experience, which cannot be satisfied just attending a short course or just like that on specific issues. And so the executive education is just that format, long-term, especially the executive education MBA, the format which is more fitable to answer to these needs. Of course, it requires a specific format to be flexible, to be managed according to your busy agenda and so on. So we have tried to design the program in a way, but of course we need also to improve some content, some formats maybe, and so on. So it's a sort of experiment, which is already going on, and we are updating the modules, the contents, and working. I think in the next future we need to work more on joint programs, joint efforts, but also I think we need to spread out some of the importance of management training at undergraduate and graduate level in specific graduate programs with scientific backgrounds, which is currently doesn't exist, in my opinion. So we need to work also on that. A different level, of course, not like executive MBA, but we need to seed also this kind of competencies, leadership, because, of course, there are some flexible patterns also in your scientific background experience. This is I don't know if I have answered to Anna, but this is a working project to start.
Okay, with that, we think we close this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all.